Hey everybody, this is Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Just want to touch on a few subjects here. Uh, they they passed a no tax on tips bill, or at least the Senate did. My apologies. I think it's a great thing, especially with inflation. This can put more money in the pockets of the average person. I mean, a lot of people who get tips are your average Americans, people who work hard. And I know some people that don't get tips. I don't get tips, but you know what? That doesn't mean that I can't be happy for people who do, and that's going to help them. I know a lot of waitresses who work really, really hard, and I know there's a lot of other people who do different jobs that work hard. You get your DoorDash delivery drivers, your service people who do things that type of nature. Instacart, all that. It's going to really put some more money in those people's pockets, which really helps support all the surrounding businesses, right? It's going to help them when they need that new washer and dryer. It's going to help them buy that washer and dryer. They need to buy their kid a new pair of shoes. It's going to help them enable them to buy a new pair of shoes. Uh, you know, that's just the reality of it. And uh, I know a lot of people are like, hey, the income tax, this, that, and the other thing. But I'm not one of those people who say, oh, that doesn't work. But with inflation and things like that going on, there's got to be some kind of give, right? They it's really, I guess it's really hard to just nail down the exact reasons to me, but you know it's gonna really help people overall. It's gonna put money in their pockets first, and like I said, it's gonna help the surrounding businesses and the people in those areas. They're gonna be able to do things right, but not just those businesses in the area. They, the companies that sell those products. Some companies have come out and said they may have to raise prices on certain things. Some companies have come out and said they're going to eat the cost on certain things related to tariffs. Either way, this is going to enable those people who work for tips to do that, to be able to buy more of those products. I know they're working on, I don't know how far it is, or, hopefully it passes, the no tax on overtime. I mean, I can see taxing overtime. All right, fair enough. But the rate that they tax it is just crazy. You're working so hard. It just is what it is. But on the flip side, our government's credit rating just got the federal government's credit rating just got downgraded, right? You're going to say, how does that affect me? Well, what that's going to do is that's going to raise the government's borrowing costs when they want to, go to the bond market. It's going to put a lot of pressure on those loans. It's something that Donald Trump talked about. I think anywhere from 900 billion to 1.2 trillion in the next year or so, we got to make in interest payments, and when you look at the credit downgrade, and I believe the Deutsche Bank, or I think it's how you say it, or Deutsche Bank, they said the spending, the economy is they're not thinking it's going to grow fast enough to accommodate the spending. Before we go, oh, Trump this, Trump that, blah, blah, blah. For the most part, every president since like the 70s has increased the debt. It really, I mean, so, I mean, I know people think Bill Clinton lowered the debt. No, 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 no. He had a budget surplus. But when you look, part of how he did the budget surplus is our government redefined what they consider debt. They took some things that they called liabilities, or some things that were debt, and they changed them to a liability. So on the government's balance sheet, doesn't look like it. That's just the reality of it. It's not the worst thing in the world. There's things that we can do, but and I know a lot of people were like, oh my God, these cuts, this, that, the other thing. Cuts aren't easy, right? But if we don't get a handle on this, the pain that we're all going to feel is going to be significantly worse. Significantly worse. Case in point, Greece, Spain. Look at those countries, look at their economies, look at the standard of living when those countries had to go through draconian budget cuts just to survive financially. You just can't keep spending just because and da 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 da. No, I mean, we talk about like, oh, the Medicare cuts, Medicaid cuts. Well, what we need is we need a nationalized system. Okay, I'm not advocating national health care, okay? But I think we need something like some sort of nationalized system, but it's kind of divvied up to the states, help funded through the federal government and through the states as well, right? Let's just get rid of Medicare and Medicaid. Just get rid of it. Make it one system, but it's each state kind of sets its own system up with, obviously, because we contribute to the federal government with taxes, they kick back, right? So let's use some of those dollars, right? Help some of the, that'll help control costs for businesses, which will help keep prices lower, which actually, if they can control the cost of healthcare, they'll be able to keep your price low, right? The price is low. The amount of money you're going to be able to buy with your wage it's gonna grow over time, even if your wage isn't growing super fast, because the cost isn't pushing everything else up, from healthcare and other items. It's just a shame that we're even having to have this kind of conversation. You know, it's crazy to me. I mean, we're $36 trillion in debt. We're worried about what people are doing in their own countries. And nobody wants to see anybody get hurt in another country or anything like that, but at some point we have to take care of our business, because if not, there's going to be another country that will gladly step in our place. And if you want to see what happens to a country post, you want to call us an empire, imperial, oligarchy, invaders, whatever. But if you want to see what happens to something like that post that kind of status, it's not the greatest thing in the world. It's going to be painful. A lot of things that us Americans are accustomed to will definitely be put on the hot seat. We don't know which way that will go. We just got to keep pushing. We cannot let this control us. We have to work on lowering the debt, and a good way to do that is, they always want to go, we want to do cuts, we want to do this, we want to do that. But the one thing you never, like, they'll say, oh, well, we want to control what the price we pay for something is. Well, where's the real work on that? I mean, they're going to go, well, we're going to do what they do in other nations. Da da da. Really? Really? Like, this is America. Like, yeah, let's pick and choose some things that other nations do. They have a lot of good ideas. But our problems are very unique to our country, because our system of government and how we operate is very unique compared to most of the world, right? So you can't always apply everything that other countries do to the United States. It's very hard to, I guess, decipher that in a way that makes, because everybody's, you talk about cutting these things, people are going to be scared. Naturally would be, right? You rely on the Medicare, the Medicaid, right? But we need a system that helps everybody, right? There's nothing wrong with a system that helps everybody. To me, that's not socialist. Socialist is telling people what they have to do. They already have to have health insurance to be able to take care of themselves. So, you're just taking from one column, kind of moving it over to the other. But as you do that, you need to figure out how to control the cost. I know in some, I believe it is Germany. I believe they spend like $500 to $1,000 per capita for medical care administration, per capita, whatever it is. And I believe the United States is like $4,000 to $6,000 in that ballpark. That's crazy to me. Germany is a very industrialized nation. I believe they're the wealthiest, or one of the wealthiest in Europe. They're pretty much one of the head nations of the EU. And there's ways to do it. Don't get me wrong, Germany's got its own problems. They're not perfect. I'm sure you can look at their healthcare system and whatever and poke holes in it. I mean, you can poke holes in anything if you look deep enough. But there's just a lot more to it than that. They're able to partially control the cost through, I believe when I read it was, I think family doctors there make around like $80,000 to $90,000, give or take. Don't get me wrong. Over there, and they don't got to pay copays, right? But one of the things that a lot of the doctors over there don't have, they don't have $500,000 in student loan debt when they get out of school. That is a surefire way to make sure that the doctor doesn't have to jack up his prices to be able to pay all that. And another thing, right? We have a little bit more of a centralized system to a point, right? I still think it should be decentralized to the states. One of the benefits of that is, it'll control the costs. Like I said, the doctors won't have to do that as much. The doctors won't have to pay out as much healthcare costs necessarily for, their own employees that they have, right? Yeah, there's some things in Germany, like certain types of surgeries, certain elective things and other like that they do gotta wait longer than we do. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, like I said, There's things we should take, things we shouldn't, right? There's things that we can do as Americans that because it's our country, but we should look abroad, get some basic ideas, bring them home, look at what we do right and apply it. Um, that's just it just makes more sense to do it that way, right? It just what we're doing now doesn't work. Even the I don't know if he's still the CEO, but after the United Healthcare CEO got shot and murdered, um, the temporary CEO, he even said, he goes, and I'm not advocating for them, but he even said America doesn't have a healthcare system. We have a patchwork of operations or something along those lines. He's not wrong. Our system does not, I know everybody goes, oh, greed, this, that. Yeah, there is greed, but our system doesn't operate as a capitalist system. The government directs a lot of how it goes. The government directs a lot of the funding. The government directs a lot of where the funding goes for research. The government directs a lot of the laws. There is, yeah, there's competition to a degree, but not like it is in, let's say, the car companies, the food industry, television industry, right? People go, oh, you don't want your healthcare to be lowered or whatever. But here's the thing: American industry, when it competes, is able to lower costs for the most part. I know sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes it blows up in our face. It's happened plenty of times, right? But overall, our industry has been able to control our costs. That's why we have a decent standard of living compared to a lot of nations. But that system, that idealism doesn't work when it's not applied. Like, where is the open, they're in certain states, I forgot what it is, but there's you can only put a certain amount of hospitals or beds and this, that in a certain area. And to do more than that, you have to have the government's permission. Please tell me how more hospitals, more access to care is a bad thing. I know people, well, what if the hospital shuts down, this, that, and the other thing? Well, yeah, there's things we can do to step in, right? There should be some basic safeguards there. But to limit the amount of things like that we can do, what sense does that make? The only thing that does is jack up the prices. Case in point, look at COVID things, right? Supplies were limited because people weren't working in the factories. Boom, prices explode. Now apply that to healthcare. It's no different because it operates the same exact way. Healthcare operates the same exact way as in that aspect. It's limited. There's not much competition. Who's going to challenge you? Bigger hospital systems swallow up smaller hospital systems. They go, ooh, this is because we can help control costs. And then next thing you know, the costs go up or care gets worse. That's statistically proven. That's not my opinion. And I'm pretty sure you could probably poke some holes in that and poke some holes in their case too. But it's, every time a healthcare system gets bought out, there's always just a dip in care, right? Because you're trying to merge ideas, you're trying to merge systems. Everybody's got to get used to each other. People get let go. There's all those changes, and it's literally all in the name of money. Money can be made in healthcare, still take care of people, make it affordable, and people can still get rich. We just have to apply what has worked in American business to healthcare. We've centralized plenty of things in this country before. And I'm not the Bernie Sanders crowd, and I'm not knocking the guy because in principle he has a lot of, his heart comes from the right place, I think, but that's how you can lower costs, right? We start lowering the cost of that. It's of healthcare, and it will start reducing the deficit, and that'll put a lot less strain on the government, and what that'll do is that it's one of our biggest expenses at the federal level. If you want to see, and I'm not saying we cut anybody's Social Security off, zero chance. I do not think we should touch it in that aspect. But if you look at Australia, and what they do with their retirement system, it has taken a huge burden off their government and helped control costs. They've privatized certain parts of it, and when you look at it, even despite all the fraud in the market that's happened, all the crashes, the Ponzi schemes, you would still be getting $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month in retirement income for the amount of money you paid in Social Security. The government could tax that as income at that point. They would get more money than what they're doing now. But as a system, that was built in the late 20s when it's kind of started coming around, when the ideas are getting kicked around, 30s kicked off, but we can do better. Don't be afraid to try something else, because what we're doing right now isn't working. Not many people can live on $1,000 to $2,000 a month when they're retired, especially when they still got to fork out money for prescriptions and co-pays and things like that. And have you seen rent lately? I mean, at that point, I know back when I was growing up, oh, grandma's got to choose between pills and food. Well, we're in the same situation. And guess what? All we've done is just throw money at the problem. Say, well, if we don't throw more money at the problem, grandma's going to die. Well, great. We've thrown more money at the problem, and now grandma's worse off. It's not always about the money. Money is a big thing, but the system has to work. It has to be executed. Our system doesn't work, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that people don't care. We just have to be willing to change. Change is key. Change is scary. I don't like change. I can tell you that. Especially when things change at work. I get paranoid. I'm like, oh my God, right? But it's necessary. After you get past that initial, oh my God phase, you'll feel a little bit better in the end. Obviously it's just a little tirade about the deficit, in healthcare and retirement, and like I said, explore what they've done in Australia. The next episode, I'll probably just, bring up some more facts about it. This is kind of just like a last minute episode, because it was just something that I guess to me mattered, right? And we can do a better job. We've got really good people in this country. We got people that care. There are a lot of greedy people, a lot of bad people, but we got a lot of people who care, regardless of race, color, religion. We all want the right thing for who we are and for our own people. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, does the government have to control every aspect of a centralized system? No, they do not. They don't have to control every little aspect of it. You can still make it a competitive system. Is it like an insurance pool in some states? And then the state government, depending on the situation of that state, says, hey, this is what can be done. This is what can't be done. Da, 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 da. And if you think that isn't the way things are done now, you might want to research how public utilities work in your state. The post office. Now, granted, the post office is not a very good example because they run a deficit, but it wasn't exactly designed to not run a deficit. Like in Michigan, we have a committee that approves rate increases in Michigan. I know they've raised rates a lot here in Michigan for electricity, but guess what? When you compare that to healthcare rate increases, it's minuscule. So if we can do something like that, and the energy companies here, they're making money. They ain't broke. Even before the rate increases, they were making money. They are not broke, not whatsoever. So if they can do that, why can't we take that kind of principle and apply it to healthcare? I'm not saying that it's got to be exactly like that. I'm just saying, there's got to be some kind of system like that we can do that'll be better for our people. Something that I really liked that RFK had said, and I know a lot of people feel a certain kind of way about him sometimes, but he even said, oh, hey, you shouldn't be taking healthcare advice from me. Well, if you were actually seriously thinking that this dude was giving you flat out medical advice, you were reading into it what you wanted to. You just were. He talked about banning food dyes. He never said that these things are the direct cause. He just said there's a correlation between certain things that are going on, other countries, certain things that we're doing here, certain chemicals that we put in our food, certain things that they're not. That's, correlation sometimes can be more proof than facts, depending how it comes about. Not everything is like, boom, it'd be nice, but that's just not the case. So it's, it just goes back like his vaccine thing, he thinks some things should be a little bit more voluntary. I would be a little bit more in the favor of spreading the schedule out a little bit for kids, right? If a disease from grandma can kill your baby, or not a disease, I'm sorry, a bacteria from grandma can kill your baby. I get that the viruses are dead inside a lot of these vaccines, and that's kind of how a lot of that is based. Well, the same principle still applies, man. I mean, there's stuff in there that's it's scary to a lot of people, especially if you don't understand it. But the more vaccines we've applied, a lot more problems have popped up. I'm not saying get rid of vaccines. I'm not even saying we shouldn't give them to people. I'm just saying maybe we should spread them out when the kid, between newborn and like 5, however, and see what happens. I mean, because the autism rates keep going up. I mean, those things keep happening, right? So obviously, what we're doing isn't solving anything. It's not even helping the problem. The problem just keeps getting worse. We have more mental health problems in this country. It keeps getting worse and keeps getting worse. And all everybody wants to do is it's a Democrat problem. It's a Republican problem. You don't care. You don't care. Come on, get real. Stop worrying about what each party does and start worrying about your neighbor. Worry about your neighbor. Your neighbor is the one who matters. Why? Because first off, we should always care about our neighbor, especially if you're a Christian. Take care of your neighbor. I mean, pretty much tells you to do that. But also your neighbor goes off the edge if he's gotten some serious mental health problems. And, I don't know, I'm not saying that you can fix it or anything, but, if we look out for our neighbors, sometimes those are the people who go off the deep end, right? I experienced something, with my son's school recently that I wasn't too fond of. I didn't like the way the situation was handled. And, that situation could have, not my son generally wouldn't do something like that. He doesn't have access to those things in our home that do something of that nature, but it's also how things are handled, right? How things are handled also impacts the way the kids respond. It impacts the way your neighbors respond. It impacts how everything goes. Let's take care of one another. Let's be good to each other. Let's do the right thing. Let's help build each other up rather than tearing each other down. What good does it do to tear your neighbor down? What good does it do? You got a problem with someone, tell them. Be honest about it. Tell 5 people that you got a problem about something like that. As long as you're willing to tell them you got the problem. But something like I've learned at work that one of my bosses said, hey, we got to be able to have tough conversations without everybody. I mean, obviously you're going to feel a certain kind of way sometimes, but we got to be able to have those conversations without everybody, wanting to throw in the towel. Because if not, how can you get better? You just won't. I mean, that's something that I've had to learn the hard way. It's been a very challenging year for me last year and a half or so in business. I was generally pretty successful for a long time. I feel like I'm starting to get a little bit back on track. I've been in the industry 25 years. But again, it just goes back to taking care of our people and doing the right thing, and sometimes seeing that certain people aren't meant for certain things in that, in certain positions, right? And that's never an easy thing to do. You don't want to go down that road, but let's get back on track. Got a little sidetracked there. Sorry. That's just it's a lot of crazy stuff happening, and the only thing that really bugs me about it is the fact that everything's focused on hate for the opposition. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, it's focused on the hate and what they're doing wrong. I don't need a general outline of what you're going to do for me. I need to know what you're going to do for me. I need to know what you're going to do to repair these problems. Or what are you going to do to help us give ourselves opportunities? What are you going to do to open up doors for American workers, for students? I mean, we spend the most per capita on student versus like the next 4 countries combined? Yet we're ranked near the bottom in the industrialized world. So that should tell you, stop panicking when they say, money and education. Obviously, money isn't the problem. When there's countries out there that spend significantly less per pupil, and they're doing way better. Let's see what they're doing. Let's give it a shot. Test it out. Because what we're doing isn't working. We're failing our kids. We are failing our children by putting them in a system that keeps failing them. I'm not saying people need to pull their kids out of school. I'm not saying get rid of public schools. But the current system isn't working for the kids. There's a lot of good teachers out there. A lot. My mother-in-law, great woman. She was a teacher. But our current system doesn't work. Our systems are broken. Neither party has fixed them. They're going to tell you that the other guy's the bad guy. They're going to convince you of it. They're going to go, oh, look, he got $5 here. Well, this guy got $5 there. Oh, look, they're giving the money to a union. Or, oh, look, they're giving money. Stop worrying about that part. Start challenging them on what are you actually going to do to make it better. And I don't want to hear a general outline. I don't need to hear a political speech. I need some concrete. I need the meat and potatoes of what you want to do. And then if you agree with that, pressure your legislature to get on board. Pressure your reps, your senators, whether it's state, federal. Like, that's how you do it. Like, the government can't fix all the problems. The idea is for the government to enable us to take care of ourselves. But a lot of their things they do puts roadblocks in it. We really need to seriously look at that. If we could somehow get a lot better at spending with education, make the money more worth it, or maybe we could figure out ways to become more efficient with education and take the savings and apply that towards, we need doctors, we need engineers. Hey, boom, you want to go get this degree? Free ride. We wouldn't have to spend a dime more. Sounds like a win-win to me. I'm not saying that that's how it would work or even if it can work, right? But it's something that we need to really seriously start exploring rather than doing I got you moments in congressional hearings. Like, good Lord, people. I got you. Cool, thumbs up, dude. You did the I got you. But you haven't solved anything. You've done nothing except for score political points. Stop worrying about the political points. Like, and Americans, we need to stop worrying about political points. We need to stop going, well, it's automatically bad because it's a Democrat. Or it's automatically bad because it's a Republican. How dumb. How dumb. I know a lot of good Democrats. I tend to be more conservative, but I have voted for Democrats plenty of times. I voted for Debbie Dingell. I voted for Barack Obama's first round, but I also vote very conservative. I vote who I think's, at the current situation when the election comes up, and, I kind of go based on that. And I mean, most of the time they don't get anything that say they're going to get done. But, I went through something here, and the one thing I can say, disagree, hate, love Debbie Dingell. This lady actually came down, and the company wasn't really going to try to do the right thing. And she came down, pressuring them, and she got a lot of help for the residents around here. I can respect that. Who cares about the party? She did the right thing. The right thing. It's okay to do the right thing. That doesn't mean you're a socialist. That doesn't mean you're a fascist. Doesn't mean you're a communist. Doing the right thing for your fellow human is called just being a good person. You don't need a Bible for that. You should just want to be a good person. If you don't want to be a good person, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, everybody's definition of a good person is different, but, it kind of is what it is. But, looking towards the future, always, like Ronald Reagan and a lot of other people, hey, our best days are ahead of us. And the only reason that will happen is if we want them to be the best days ahead of us. The only way they won't be the best days ahead of us is if we all pack it in, tuck our tails between our legs, go home crying and blaming everybody else. Stop doing that. Just stop. It's not going to serve you anything. It's not going to help. It's not going to make anything better. You want to know how I know? And I'm not an expert. I'm not some PhD guy. But if all that worked, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in as a country. We wouldn't be sitting here cheering if someone gets shot because we don't like their politics. Cheering if, someone dies. Like, really? Really? Like, you don't got to like the person. You don't got to be besties with them. You don't got to agree with them. But when you do things like that and you advocate for things like that and you're willing to laugh at someone's death, you're helping contribute to the problem of a toxic society and toxic things like we have now. And I think the majority of us are better than that. We just get caught up in it. We get caught up. Flat out, we do get caught up. I do sometimes too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect. Hey, I try to do the things that I want to say and do, but I'm not perfect. I'm not. I make mistakes every day, all the time. But I always try to approach everything from a point of caring. I try. I care about people. My bosses care about people. My bosses are good people. It's the reason why I've been at specific company. I've been in the industry for 20 years, but I've been at this specific company for almost 20 years. I could have went. I actually had the opportunity to go somewhere else and make more money, and I didn't. Why? Because I like the people that I'm around. I feel at home there. You know, I feel comfortable when I go to work. Not comfortable in terms of like, oh, nothing's ever gonna happen. You know, I think I'm gonna lose my job every day, right? I'm like the guy from Office Space. Ah! But you know, it's, I don't know if home's the right word, but you know, the company does the right thing most of the time, 99% of the time, by our people. We do the right thing. And that's a good thing. You know, a lot of companies could take something from the company I work for. Obviously, you know, for a million reasons, I will never specify the company, but you know, they do a lot of good things. And I promise you, people, there are employers out there that try to do the right thing. Not all of them, probably not even a majority of them, but there are companies out there that do the right thing by their people, and that's a good thing. If you don't like where you're at, maybe you just don't fit in the culture there. Maybe it's just not for you. You know, maybe it's just the way they think doesn't click with you, and that's okay too. Go find something that works for them. You know, because they would find something, you know, that works for you, I should say, because they would definitely find something that works for them if you were in that spot. That's not being harsh. That's not, you know, because a lot of people go, oh, the company will replace you in 5 minutes. Da 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 da. Well, when you go get a new job, you're doing the same thing. We just have to respect that that is what it is, and stop making it a point of animosity. You break up with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. You're literally doing the same thing. So it doesn't need to be this point of animosity, people. Recognize things for what they are. If you need a backup plan, get yourself a backup plan. Find somewhere where you feel like you fit in. Fit in doesn't mean everybody's your best friend and everybody, ooh, no, it's just where you fit in, where your skills or your personality, where it clicks. Sometimes it may happen for you, sometimes it may not. I'm not saying that it would, but what I'm saying is just give it a shot. Try. Throw the rock against the wall. See what happens. You never know. The worst thing you could do is still be in the same spot that you're in. But that's your choice. You know, I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm just giving you some perspective, maybe a different one. You know, do as you please. I mean, you know, it's a free country, however you want to word that. You know, we just got to stop being a certain kind of way. We're better than that. You know, again, all this goes back to everything that I've said tonight goes back to about being a good person, right? And no taxes on tips, helping out people. A lot of people who get tips are lower middle income or, you know, in that ballpark. We're middle class and lower, right? What do we always talk about? We talk about the middle class is getting pinched. This can help us. People go, what about the revenue that's lost to the government? Let's become more efficient with some of these exorbitant expenses. That doesn't mean we necessarily need to cut things from people. We got to find a way to control the cost so that the government can afford it and do these things. That's how business works. Business gets more efficient. I know the government's not necessarily a business, but the government needs to get more efficient too. In socialist countries, the government gets more efficient. Why don't we? You know, whenever we do anything in this country, everything gets tied up for 10 years in court. You want to know why certain things don't get done? Because it takes forever in court. Forever. You know, rather than us all just trying to work together, we're all out there to be like, oh, it's just pointing the finger and everybody will find 10 reasons about why they're righteous or whatever you want to call it. But then in the end, you know, we all lose. What does it matter then? You know? It just kind of is what it is there. But, you know, I want to thank everybody for listening in. You know, like I said, I think we're better than a lot of things we're seeing. A lot of things we're seeing people do. I do see a lot of good things people are doing too. I know a lot of good people. I try to be around good people. Is everybody perfect? Nope. Am I perfect? Nope. But I care. And if we all tried to care, we'd be in a better place. From the lowest worker all the way to the richest person. If we all cared about another a little bit more, we'd be in a better spot. Hope this catches everybody doing well. Have a good night.